Hey friends, before we start the show, I have a really exciting announcement to make. The Gaytheist in the Bible Belt Tour. Sponsored by the Secular Student Alliance, I'll be speaking at college campuses throughout the South during the month of October to talk about the intersections of LGBTQ and atheist activism, and to equip and inspire those on the front lines of these fights. The dates for the tour can be found in the description box of the show, but the first set of weekend dates is going to be October 7th at the College of Charleston in South Carolina, and October 8th at Clemson University in South Carolina. Hope to see you there.
Exclusively on Secular Media Network, this is the Gaytheist Manifesto.
Hello and welcome to the Gaytheist Manifesto, your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement. I am your host, Callie Wright, joined by my co-host, Ari Stillman. What's up, Ari?
We're recording a show.
Again.
That's what's up. Again. Still here.
Right. So, our guest this week is friend of the show, Dan Arel. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on again.
Dan's new book is The Secular Activist, a how-to manual for protecting the wall between church and state. Dan was kind enough to provide me with a copy of the book. I've read it. It's fantastic. So, Dan, why don't you just kind of give us the synopsis? What's the purpose of the book? What's it all about?
The purpose of the book is to inspire people to become secular activists. The whole idea was, and it even came from my own life experience of sitting on a computer, seeing a news story come by of a local school or a local city council doing something that I thought, that is awful. I can't believe they're doing that. They're not letting, someone give a secular invocation, or the school is passing out, Bibles out in front, anything along those lines. And then you think to yourself, man, I hope someone does something about that. Or you share it and say, this makes me mad, and that's all you do. And I wanted to let people know that they can actually do something about that. That it doesn't have to be one of those things that you just go, oh, I wish someone would take care of it. And then you hope that, Freedom from Religion Foundation or Americans United jump in. That you can be that catalyst. You can get that ball rolling. You can put a stop to the things that you see happening. And I use a mixture of my own life experience, dealing with Ken Ham's Ark Encounter and his tax breaks. But I also pulled in stories from others who, were able to get secular invocations included in their city council meetings, and ideas like that, to show that these were just people sitting at home, saw something that was wrong and took action. And they made a huge difference. And that it's not always the big organizations that do all the work, because as much as they want to, they can't. They don't have the capacity to fight every little battle. And if they're needed, they can't know about every single battle. So someone has to get that ball rolling. An example that happened after the book was a parent contacted me and said, I'm sick of going to every school function across the street at the church. He said, I walk into that church and it's covered in praise God, hanging Jesuses on crucifixes and all these things, and I just don't like it. And he contacted me and said, what can I do? And I asked him if he had talked to the principal, and he said he did, and the principal said they offer it to us for free, and it's a great location with lots of parking. So he was like, what can I do? So there wasn't a lot that I could technically do, but together we were able to contact Freedom from Religion Foundation. Their lawyers drafted up a quick letter. Within 2 weeks, the school was like, we are so sorry, we will not hold our meetings at that church anymore. And imagine if that parent just stayed frustrated and went home and kept going and never said anything and never got anyone involved. It would have gone nowhere, and he would have continued to do it, and parents after him would have continued to do it. But this one single parent decided to take action, and by just contacting one person, they were able to change the way the school's going to handle that situation, probably forever.
Yeah, one of my favorite things, and it's stated a couple of different times throughout the book, we've talked a couple of times on the show about, how do we define activism? What actually is activism? Because I hear so many people saying so often, in the context of, someone talking to me about public speaking or the podcast, like, oh gosh, I wish I could do what you do. Like, I want to make a difference. And, it pains me to hear people say that, because I feel like I don't know if we've perpetuated this. I don't know if it's more of a natural feeling or what, but I feel like there's this idea that you have to be, a podcaster or a YouTuber or a public speaker, or, you have to show up at city council meetings and yell in the face of city councilmen, to be an activist and to make a difference. And that idea is so pervasive, and it kills me, because that's really not what it is. And that's one of the things that I appreciated so much about the book, is you stating several times, like, sure, that stuff matters, but I mean, it can be as simple as, my mom's saying a whole bunch of racist stuff on Facebook, and I'm gonna confront her about it. Like, that's activism.
Exactly. And and one example I love to use over and over is, the case against quote unquote slacktivism, the idea of, sitting on your computer and being a keyboard activist. A lot of people like to talk down to that. Oh, you're not an activist because, you're just on your computer sharing your opinions. But there is a really big, crucial part of activism there that people seem to just overlook, because it's not as tangible as holding a sign out in front of city council. It's not as victorious as, having this big battle with somebody and coming out the winner, and, changing a law or something like that. But I'm sure you remember probably 3 years ago now, when one day where everyone changed their Facebook avatars to the equal symbol from the Human Rights Council.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Huge. Now, I saw a lot of people saying, oh, now you're, speaking out. It's easy to change your symbol when you're, cisgender, and, all these things aren't, affecting you. And, I saw that from both sides. I saw it from the LGBT community, who some were just, upset that was happening and didn't think that reflected enough fight for them. I saw some that embraced it and loved to see all these people changing their profile. And I was talking to one friend, and she was just completely against it. She thought it was horrible. She thought people were, just jumping on a bandwagon. But I had an immediate example, because my mom, who is quiet as a mouse, ask, who are you voting for this election? She'll say, that's my own personal business.
Aww.
Yeah, my mom does the same thing. She absolutely refuses.
Yeah, she's very private. She keeps these, and the truth is, she's incredibly liberal. She's very liberal, but she doesn't want the discussion. She doesn't want the debate. She doesn't just want to deal with it. That's not what she likes to do. So on Facebook, her posts are pictures of grandkids and running and things like that. Never the slightest inclination to anything she believes. You wouldn't know she's a Christian. You wouldn't know she votes Democrat in every single election. You wouldn't know that she supports all of these things. She just doesn't talk about it. And that's fine. But on that day, she changed her avatar to an equal symbol. And when you change your profile picture, as you know, it posts to the wall that you've updated your profile picture. And people started commenting, wow, Vicky, that surprises me. Or, why would you change it to that? And she very kindly engaged in each and every one of them with a simple, I just think everyone deserves the same rights in this country, and everyone should be treated equally. And she moved on. No debate, no anything. But in that single instance, she let her, I don't even know how many friends she has, somewhere between 25 and 300, let's say. She just let them all know where she stands. And she didn't enter a debate. She didn't get into a discussion. But she became another person on that list. And that maybe out of her friends, someone else who might not be brave enough to speak up or say something might suddenly think, hey, I can change my avatar. That's not confrontational. That's not me, marching out in the street and saying something and having to deal with the discussion. I can do something this simple, show my solidarity, and let other people know. And that kind of snowballs. And so I think we kind of downplay the importance that can have, because all you have to do sometimes is plant that little seed in someone's mind to make them rethink it.
Yeah, I agree. And I remember when that happened, I actually had kind of conflicting feelings about it, because on one hand, I'm like, well, that's really cool to see, like, how many people, at least in principle, are in support. Like, and that's really affirming, and that's really, a positive thing to see. And that kind of makes me feel good. But at the same time, we would run into, like, after the Supreme Court marriage equality decision, everybody had their Facebook picture as a rainbow. And I would see people with rainbow Facebook pictures arguing that I shouldn't be able to use the women's restroom.
Right.
And so it's like every time I see those things, I have this internal conflict, because I'm like how many people are just like, yeah, like, cool, LGBT, without having any, without having any real knowledge or, in any sort of depth of knowledge on the issue. So I'm kind of back and forth on that thing, but I agree. That's, one of the things that I read that actually changed my mind a lot on a question a lot like this is you hear a lot of times, Westboro or some group like Westboro shows up to protest at a college campus, or
no TPP, no KGB, no
right.
HGA.
Right. Yeah. MSG and all that.
Yeah. MSG.
But so, people organize counter protests to Westboro, and they're like, yeah, like, we're going to go counter protest. And in my mind, I'm just like, you're giving them what they want. You're giving them the attention that they desperately want, that they feed off of. That's literally why they do it. So why are you there to counter protest? And that was my position for years. And then I read an article, I don't even remember where it was, and I've tried to find it since then, and I haven't been able to, and I'm really bummed about it. But the argument that they made is, imagine yourself as a queer kid. Say you're, 10, 11 years old, puberty's starting, you recognize that, you're a boy who's attracted to other boy, or other things like that. And you drive by, and you see all of these people preaching this message of hate, and you see no one opposing them. What message does that send to you? And so that after reading that, I'm like, wow, I want to go counter protest Westboro now. So just something as simple as, hey, you know what? I'm going to post this thing. I had this thought that maybe others might not. Now if I'm confronted with that thing and I have the opportunity to do something about it, my actions are going to be different now. So I think, that's just one of many, many examples where those kinds of things are effective. And it's, and that's, the person that wrote that has no idea that, I'm changing what I'm doing as a result. And I think that's one of the things that, when you decide to do activism that can be so disappointing is a lot of times you never even see the impact that you have. So you think you're like, oh, I'm doing all this stuff and I'm not really making a difference and I'm being so ineffective. And I think that's kind of another important point is like, you just have to do it. And you're not always going to have that tangible result or that tangible feedback to let you know that what you did actually made a difference for people.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons and don't forgive me, it's been a while since I've read my own book, but very early on, I do mention, you're not going to make money being an activist. And that was really because,
except if you're in the SJW
not just
circle
because,
jerk.
That's why everyone's getting involved. But a lot of people come to me with that question a lot, which it surprises me how many people kind of open with, hey, how do I make money doing this? Because if any money I do make doing this went away, I'd still do it every single day, just as hard as I am. The fact that I've been fortunate enough to be able to get paid to write and travel and do these things just happens to be a bonus tacked on to my activism. And that applies further than just being paid. I mean, really, you can just be paid by having someone send you an email that says, you just changed my life, or you just helped me get through this, which is wonderful, but you don't get those also, like you just said. I don't know how many people I've affected. I don't know if I've affected any. But I do it in the hopes of doing one. And I'll keep doing it even if I never find out. But it's a hard thing to really get people's mind wrapped around that, you're going to do all of this work and you can potentially change lives or potentially change the world, and you may never know.
Exactly. And that's, it's tough because, as human beings, I mean, I think it's natural that we crave some sort of affirmation for what we're doing. I mean, regardless of what it is, even if we're speaking just generally about life, we want to be affirmed in who we are and what we're doing. And we want to feel like, the people around us are okay with who we are and support who we are. And, so, I mean, it's really hard to step out and do these things and be unsure of whether or not you're making a difference. And that was another thing that I really appreciated reading in the book was it's in the introduction, like if you're getting into this to make money, you should probably just not. That's like the short version, because you can, I've seen it, you have people who get in and like they're very obviously trying to create a persona for themselves, and they do things purposely to stir up attention, and it's just it's so frustrating to watch. And I've said a couple of times on this, like I would love to be able to make a living from activism, from the Patreon, from speaking and stuff like that would be awesome. But if it never happens, that's okay, and if I have to compromise what I'm doing to get there, it's not worth it to me. I would rather just we get enough support that I can travel to cons and I can do this kind of stuff. And, if I happen to be able to make a living doing it, I have the chance to do even more. But if I don't, that's okay, because that's not what it's about for me. It's about the message. It's about what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that's a really important call out at the very beginning, kind of a reality check, because I think, we've all seen the people who are fame seekers who, I want to be a famous atheist activist, and that's what it's really about for them. And you can see, those people come and go so fast because it just never works the way they think it's going to.
Yeah. And I've seen it too. I've seen podcasts that come up and they say, here's a new podcast. They get some really big guests. Here's our Patreon. And then within 4 episodes, they're threatening to stop the show unless people become patrons. Or patrons. Like, you haven't even established yourself and you're demanding that people pay for this free thing you've offered them. And then suddenly they quit and go away and they disappear. I've seen bloggers do it that get involved, and they're like, they start their blog and then they say, why is so-and-so getting more hits than me? Or why is so-and-so doing this? And it tears them apart. And I've seen people that don't deserve it be paid lots to do what they do. I'm not to name names, but there's some certain atheists out there with YouTube channels. And, I
was going to say, we talked about some of those folks on the YouTube episode a while ago.
They have blonde hair, blonde beards,
and have some sort of superlative adjectives.
Yeah. They tell people to vote for Trump.
Narrowing it down a little bit, not too much.
Yeah.
But and so you have to be able to take that too, because, you see those people that don't deserve it making way too much money, who aren't there to change things. They're there to just stir the pot. But I remember that they're taking people's money and doing nothing. And I'm not here to worry about them. And so as much as I want to get worked up about the money they're making or all these things, I have to, you have to remember to keep focus on your goals and why you're doing it. And if that does mean I have to speak up once in a while about what they're doing because they're damaging to the group as a whole, then so be it. I will stand up and say something. But, it's not, I don't want to make my job to stand up and say, don't pay them. My job is just to keep them from doing further damage.
Right.
And if people want to throw their hard-earned money at these idiots, then I can't stop them.
Right.
But I can at least curb the damage they're doing.
Hi, this is Trav Mamone, host of the By Any Means podcast. Join me every week as I interview bloggers, podcasters, writers, and activists about the intersections of atheism, humanism, racial justice, feminism, LGBTQ rights, and other social issues. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes, Spreaker, and Stitcher, and you can read my blog at freethoughtblogs.com/byanymeans. And remember, that's bi spelled B-I. Come take a listen to the musings of a queer humanist because, hey, aren't we all a little bi-curious?
The staff of Secular Coalition for America lobbies U.S. Congress on issues of separation of church and state, and they've become a powerhouse for change in the United States government. You'll definitely want to subscribe to receive their email action alerts. These are updates for important issues and ones that you can get involved with directly. And hopefully, you'll consider making a contribution to the Secular Coalition for America to help them continue fighting for your equality. You can do it all at secular.org.
There's a section of the book called Why We Fight, and and it's a breakdown of obviously why this sort of activism is important, and I think I've even seen it in the atheist community where when you hear about something that Americans United for church-state separation does, or that Freedom from Religion Foundation does, where they send letters to schools to stop religious programming in schools, or they're fighting for secular invocations at city council meetings and government functions and that kind of thing. I've seen people make the argument that that's petty, that's going after the wrong thing when we've got so many other problems that are arguably bigger that we could be going after. I would love to hear your response to that.
This actually reminds me of, I just did a Facebook video, like a Facebook Live thing, and someone asked me a question that has always sort of bothered me a bit, and I've always struggled with the answer. And it was, how do I feel about the fight over In God We Trust on our money? Because at face value, that's arguably one of the more brought up things when we talk about the petty fights we get in. Mm-hmm. Is and I do kind of see it the same as emailing or sending letters to a school that maybe after school has Bible coloring books being handed out or something, and it seems like it's not that big of a deal. It seems like
you color the boils on the leper.
I hope that's a page in one of these books. I really do.
I'm going to make mine purple.
No, it's as you color the picture of Abraham holding the knife right over his son.
Exactly.
These are family friendly. Come on. And it dawned on me a bit later, because I would have made the argument that we're wasting our time within In God We Trust. Probably even a few months ago, not even that long ago. But what I saw was something I didn't really predict, was that In God We Trust was going to become empowering to the Christian right. Suddenly, they need to write it on the back of police cars. And every police car. And cities are coming in and saying, we're going to put God on police cars. We're going to put crosses on police cars. And they're going to push as far as they can because we made it a petty argument so that they felt they could get away with it.
What do you mean it's not a Christian nation? It's on the damn money.
Right.
And so by backing off from it, we left the door wide open. And anything we back off from, they're going to attack and use everywhere. So if a school district in Florida starts passing out Bibles after school as kids exit the school, and we say, that's too small for us to deal with, then the school district next to them is going to see that and say, we can do that too. And then the next one. And like a virus, it's going to spread. And then we're going to have to get involved, and it's going to be too late. Or
it'll be too far along for us to.
It'll be in all these endless battles. Schools will be doing. We'll be fighting a ruling here against a ruling here, a conflicting ruling. We need to stop these things when they start. And so, as small and as petty as it is, it's not that much work for one of the team lawyers at Freedom from Religion Foundation, or AU, to draft a 1 or 2 page letter that cites why they can't do it, why it's unconstitutional, and fax it over or email it over. It's not that difficult. And if it stops it then, we've solved ourselves a world of problems later.
Right. Yeah. I think there's a little bit of, I guess sort of a misconception about how much work goes into those kinds of things. Cause like you said, it's, they probably spend an hour maybe typing this letter and, maybe 20 or $30 in postage to send it out to a couple of different places. And, I think that's analogous a lot of times when, something happens and I post something on Facebook and I'm like, oh, like this is awful. I'm not a big fan of this. They're like, gosh, why are you getting so worked up? And I'm like, yeah, I'm so worked up about this. I spent 30 seconds writing a Facebook post about it out of my day.
Right.
Like, let's chill out for a second here, guys.
Yep. I get a lot of, you should just let that go. And like literally, like I posted a status update on Facebook that took me 30 seconds.
Right. Out of my 24-hour day.
Yeah. You're gonna let that go. But I already did. I just said my piece about it. And if it becomes bigger, I'll tackle it. But sometimes I just want to let something out. And it took 30 seconds to do. And now my opinion's vocal. I get it every day still. Why do you bother bringing attention to Ken Ham? And I honestly, every single time, I have to say the same exact thing. Because if we all stopped calling him out every time he did something, he would just do more and more and more.
Yeah. Well,
the second we give him an inch, he's going to take $18 million.
I see what you did there.
He can't. It does, to a degree, it seems to make sense in your head. If we stop giving Ken Ham promotion, he's going to be able to stop promoting. But the people he's promoting to aren't listening to us.
Right.
The people that are giving him money aren't looking to us to figure out what's right and wrong. People are giving him money already love him. But if we stop listening to him and stop calling him out and stopping him, he's going to ask for $18 million. He's going to ask for $100 million. He's going to ask for $200 million. He's going to keep taking things he can from the government if we just leave him alone.
Well, yeah, those little things become a rallying cry. Excuse me. The "In God We Trust" on the back of police cars and on the money, and the school-led prayers and the school breakfasts that have a Bible message and those kinds of things. In the grand scheme of things, sure, like those seem like little things, but it's just like you're saying they're going to take that and they're going to run with it as much as they can because it starts with the money. That's just a symbolic gesture, and then it starts with the police cars, and then everyone feels empowered, and it goes even further. So it's all interconnected. None of it exists in a vacuum.
Exactly. And I've come to the point where I don't find anything petty anymore, just because it might seem petty to me because I don't care about it. It might be a cause that doesn't matter to me personally, but I bet it matters to someone. And I bet it matters to me more than I even think if it was a snowball out of control. And so I think we kind of put things out of perspective, and we all naturally sort of think first, how does this affect me? And a lot of people are stuck in that trap where they don't care about certain issues because it doesn't bother them. It doesn't change their life. And it's overcoming that. It's overcoming that changes things. I've talked to guys before. I'm just, I'm working on this and it has to do with, Planned Parenthood and abortion. And they're like, yeah, well, I can't have one. So it's like, great, but I don't care that you can't have one. I will never, well, I can't say never because, there's Planned Parenthood does actually offer things to me, but the chances of me using Planned Parenthood are a lot slimmer than that of a woman, by and large. That doesn't mean I shouldn't care about what's happening there, because if it never once affects me, it affects somebody negatively, and if I can do something about it, I should. Plain and simple. And that's what activism really comes down to. A lot of people get involved in activism because of something that involves them personally and pulls them in. But some get involved for various reasons. But sometimes once you're in and you realize you can do something, you're going to start using what you can and what you know to help others. Because, the old saying goes, no one is free while others are oppressed. That's sort of how I feel every single day when I wake up.
I was thinking about, even if this, for example, take the "In God We Trust" on the money, even if it didn't ever get to a point where they use that as, a weapon to have further religious privilege in a way that would actually affect people's lives. It just says "In God We Trust" on the money. That's not affecting anyone's life, really. I still think that it would be important to try and fight against that just because of the principle of it, just because of the messaging behind it. It's not actually affecting necessarily anyone's life directly, but it's still sending a message that, this is a Christian country, this is a country, or at least a theistic country, and this is a country where, we value theism more than non-theism, and it's unconstitutional even if it's not necessarily directly affecting anyone. So I think that kind of thing is still important to fight against in some sense, just because of the messaging behind it.
I 100% agree. I even think politically it makes sense because of what it reflects. "In God We Trust" didn't come into our money until we were scared to death of communism.
Exactly.
And I think so. Even if you don't think about the theistic side of things, it even goes back to it exemplifies this fear we had at one point where we locked people up for communist sympathies and all. I think "In God We Trust" really just exemplifies a lot of terrible things about this country. And it also sends a terrible message. It also doesn't reflect the secular country we are. So, I think and it took me a while to even get to this point and really encompass all of that. But I think that is one of probably our bigger fights that we don't realize. Imagine if we won that fight. Imagine if Congress voted and removed it. Like, we call it such a petty argument, but imagine the blow that would hand the Christian right who think that they have complete control of this country.
Yeah. But of course, that entire point depends on people even wanting to be educated on the historical context behind those kinds of things. And I think
True.
that's a recipe for disappointment right there. So another thing that I enjoyed in the book is that you actually use some sort of case studies about some of the losses and some of the victories in secular activism. Do you want to talk? Let's talk about the losses first. We can get to the victories later because we want to be sad and then happy after.
First and foremost is the SJW takeover.
Right. So
yeah, our first loss was feminism, and then Black Lives Matter. I mean, we lost.
Yeah, the minute that we stopped talking about counter apologetics, we were done. Like, it was.
Yeah,
it was just over.
soon as atheism became anything but there is no God. I thought losses, including them, was important because they probably are going to happen more than wins, and we learned from them, and we turned them into victories later.
And I was explaining this to a friend of mine last night. We got together for dinner, and he was talking about how, like, all the activists that he always seem angry all the time, and I'm like, well,
yeah,
like, that's
we're mad about stuff.
That's kind of how that works. Like, that's just kind of the nature. And I tell people that too when they say they want to get into activism. I'm like, I really don't want to discourage you, but I don't also want to lie to you. Like, you're going to be angry a lot, and you're going to be disappointed a lot, and you just need to kind of figure out a way to come to peace with that.
What do we want? Not a lot. When do we want it? Whenever you're comfortable and ready.
Well, that reminds me, and a little off topic, but I was listening to an interview with a politically left activist, and the host said, "How are you today?" And he said, "I'm well in the context of my life in my little bubble right now." Oh. He said, because he was well. He woke up, he had a good breakfast, he had a good day. But that was about it, because he knew outside of his little bubble, the world was in shambles and he had work to do.
Right.
And so he was well at that moment, but others weren't. And that didn't make him completely well. And I thought, I wouldn't use that every single time someone says, "How are you?" But like, I think it underpins activism in that degree that, we are always to a degree upset because there's an endless amount of things to be upset about. And it doesn't mean that I don't wake up, smile at my kids, and go have a great day. And have a grumpy face all day long because there's things out of my control that are happening that I need to be working on. That's not what that means. But what that means is that when I'm working and when I'm doing these things, I'm angry about them. I'm not fighting for equal rights and equal justice and human rights because I'm happy. I'm doing it because I'm mad. I'm mad that construction workers are trying to put a pipeline through Native American reservations right now. I'm mad that we're even discussing what bathrooms people can use. I'm mad that churches are getting taxpayer money to build, or ministries, I should say, are getting taxpayer money to build giant landlocked boats in the middle of nowhere. I'm mad about all of these things, yet I wake up and smile every single day and I couldn't be happier with my life. But there's a context to our anger, and the losses don't help.
Right.
And because we do lose. I mean, we fight for 10 commandments be taken down, and sometimes we win and sometimes we don't. We fight to, rally behind getting, decals taken off cop cars. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. And losses sometimes, in the long run, can be better than victories. Because sometimes if you're handed something, you become complacent. When you make a demand and it's answered, you didn't have to fight. There was no struggle. You didn't learn anything other than saying, I want to do X. I did it. I'm done. So sometimes a fight that's too easy doesn't rally the troops and doesn't make for a bigger coalition for bigger change.
Yeah, and a really good example of that is so I in the activism that I do, it's largely the podcast and public speaking and that kind of stuff. And I have definitely done things where I wasn't preaching to the choir necessarily, but generally speaking, when we talk about the podcast, I go do a talk, something like that, I usually get pretty positive feedback. And if I get challenges, they're usually small, they're questions that are rather easily answered, and it's a minority thing. So I had sort of had this, realistically, I know that these fights are not fights that are easily won, but I had sort of gotten accustomed to, like, I'm going to do this thing and people are going to be into it. And people are going to be affirming and supportive. And then I went to try to convince the Cincinnati Public Library to add trans-inclusive healthcare to their benefits. I have a friend who works there, and she'd been fighting them for like a year, trying to get them to add this rider to their insurance that would cover transition-related surgeries. And so she told us all to go to this board meeting. And there were 10 or 12 of us there, all in support. And we were given a chance to speak. And I mean, there was stuff about science that I talked about. There was the emotional appeal. There was the appeal to, so many people are doing this now. You're being left behind in the dust. There were, people, I love the library. I'm a library patron, and it kills me to know that you're not taking care of your employees. And just all of these really great, passionate, articulate arguments for them to add.
She basically did the best job ever.
Right. And so, and I didn't help organize any of this. I just participated in it. And I, said my 2 or 3 minute piece about why I thought they should add it. And I was just thinking to myself, like, there's, these people sitting around this table, and there is no way that they can look somebody in the face, especially because my friend got up and spoke last. And I mean, she was fighting tears. She, eventually, I mean, she lost it. She was crying, and she was so passionate and just so much in pain at being denied this from her employer, because it's basically the only way that she would ever get access to it. And I thought to myself, there is no way that this group of human beings can look this person in the face and tell them no. After this, like, it's the human connection. It's seeing someone directly in front of you. There's no way that doesn't trigger some kind of compassion. I don't want to think of these people as monolithically evil. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way these people don't have some level of compassion inside them. And after it was all over with, it took them 30 seconds to say no. And that just, I mean, the club that I run sound at is right next to where the library was. And I just went over there, and the guy that owns the club is a good friend of mine. He's like the big brother to me. And I was just like, Chris, I don't know what just happened. And it was, and I mean, it was, as far as my attitude towards activism, I think it was helpful because I think it was a wake up call to say, like, those things are going to happen. I mean, those things happen every day, but I think experiencing it is something that probably, speaking specifically in the context of my attitude toward activism, I think was sort of a positive thing, even though it was, generally a terrible thing. So that was, it was a really long, example there, but I think it's an important one to kind of illustrate the point you were trying to make.
Yeah, that's, it is hard to imagine losing being good, or especially like, your example right there. They lost a really important thing, and you gained from it, but others likely did. And that may just empower the fight later, and a regrouping, where did we go wrong? What can we do better? How can we improve this? And it sort of sends you back to the drawing board in a sense. And like you said, everything is so easily handed to you time and time again. And then when you finally hit that wall, the worst thing that would happen is that you say, oh, that's it, I lost, and you walk away. But that generally isn't what happens if you're prepared. And that's why I thought including losses was important, because I want the reader to know, look, you're going to pick your cause, you're going to go out there, and you're going to lose. But you're going to pick yourself back up, and you're going to do it again. And you're going to do it again and again. And every time you do it, you're going to learn something. Whether you win or lose, learn from it and rally behind it and keep at it. Don't lose and give up. Lose and rethink it.
Hello, I'm Alan Cumming. Live Out Loud is calling on the LGBT community to help improve life for gay teens. Take what you know and gay it forward through the Homecoming Project, a chance to return to your old high school and share your story with LGBTQ youth. Your life experiences and wisdom can prove invaluable to teens who may be struggling with their own identities and paths in life. One day can make a lasting difference. Gay it forward with the Homecoming Project. Find us at liveoutloud.info to learn how you can get involved today.
Today in school, I learned a lot. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me. In English, I learned that I'm disgusting. And in physics, I learned that I'm a loser.
Today in school, I learned that I'm ugly and useless. And in gym, I learned that I'm pathetic and a joke. In history, I learned that I'm trash.
Today in school, I learned that I have no friends. In English, I learned that I make people sick. And at lunch, I learned that I sit on my own because I smell. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me.
In biology, I learned that I'm fat and stupid. And in math, I learned that I'm trash.
The only thing I didn't learn in school today?
The only thing I didn't learn today?
The only thing I didn't learn?
Is why no one ever helps.
Kids witness bullying every day. They want to help, but they don't know how. Teach them how to stop bullying and be more than a bystander at stopbullying.gov.
Are you tired of being informed by all the information Callie's given you?
You wish you had a podcast to listen to that didn't make you think about confusing things and difficult social issues. Waiting for Wrath, the beer-guzzling podcast you listen to when you're done being informed.
And are there any particular losses that you included in the book that you think would be important to talk about here?
The 9/11 cross.
God, that was I remember that. Yeah.
And one of the reasons I included it was, on a personal note, this all kind of started when I was not really that active in the secular atheist activism at all. Like, I would kind of pipe up here and there when I didn't like something, but I wasn't really where I was. I had spent many years in animal rights activism and really hard burned out from that and had bad experiences with their organizations, and was sort of in between phase where I was just vocal about things I cared about, but not really involved in any. And I saw American Atheists, suing for this cross thing. And I thought, oh, that's just how stupid. Like, it's a dumb cross. And then a friend of mine said, no, read this. And they sent me an article. And it hit me about how important it was, because it wasn't a dumb cross. And it wasn't just a piece of natural rubble. Long story short, a construction worker saw this thing, a cross beam, looked kind of like a cross, out of a, 2 buildings that collapsed on 9/11 that had thousands of cross beams. So not much of a miracle taking place there when a cross beam exists in a building made of cross beams. But not only that, he cut it out and then cut further to fashion it to look exactly like a Christian cross. So it also wasn't a natural wreckage thing. They then carved Jesus into it, decorated it more to look even more Christian, and then said, this miracle must be included in the 9/11 museum. And the lawsuit was never about the cross. It was about inclusion. And to lose the fight for inclusion is what stings. Because American Atheists said, look, statistically, a large percentage of people that died in those buildings and in those planes were atheists.
Or just non-Christians in general. People of other religions too. Yeah,
exactly. Well, but here's where it kind of stings a bit. So they said, you're including a cross that leaves these people out. And so the museum at first said, you're right. And so they let Jewish people put something in there. I believe Hindus or it was another, they let put something in there. And so the atheists said, all right, we'd like to do something. And they said, no. And I said, well, we had people on that plane too. And they said, no, you don't get something. So they sued, remove the cross or include everybody. And the judge ruled against American Atheists. And to imagine that there's a museum for more than 3,000 Americans killed by a religious attack, and then to be told they can't be involved in it or, remembered in a significant way, but these quote unquote, these Abrahamic religions, let's include them because they matter. And I was very rarely do I get actually like turn red furious. I did when Ken Ham ended up being awarded a lot of money, and I was when we lost this case. And it was because that was a museum to a massive piece of American history saying atheists don't matter. You died there, but fuck you. That's all I heard from that. And instead of throwing up my hands and saying, I give up, I basically told myself this will never happen again. And I will never not be involved in making sure that that kind of thing doesn't happen again to us. Because, there had to have been hundreds, if not at least 1,000 people in that crash and in the whole attack that aren't included in the very finite amount of religious inclusion they decided was proper.
Yeah, and that whole fight was so annoying too, because the entire thing was painted as these atheists want the cross removed. Like, that was literally the only story that was told. And of course it was, because that's the only story that ever gets told when atheists are in the news.
Fox News made it sound like we were having mental breakdowns over it.
Yeah.
They laughed at David Silverman on air, saying like, "Oh, you're gonna have this mental breakdown. Like, if you see the cross," and he kept arguing that had nothing to do with seeing the cross or not being Christian or even the cross at all. If the cross was there, and so is every other religious sect or non-religious sect being shown, he'd have zero problem with it. And they laughed at him for it. Stephen Colbert attacked him for it.
Wow, that's disappointing. I didn't know that.
That's where the name Mr. Atheist Pants came from. David Silverman's Twitter
really?
handle.
I did not
was
know
Stephen
that.
Colbert going off on him on the Colbert Report about the lawsuit, and then said, "Oh, Mr. Atheist Pants," condescendingly.
I want atheist pants. Those sound awesome. I think all my pants are atheist pants.
So I mean, we had the liberals attacking us for it because they couldn't get past the media talking points. They couldn't look at the bigger implications of it. And I think that loss was a big one. A lot of times, we'll get told by a city council you can't do your secular invocation, and then city council gets replaced as a new leader and you do it. Or you just keep pushing them and you annoy the crap out of them, and finally they say, all right, shut up and do it. But when a federal court, slams down and says, you're not included, that's a sting, and that is the rallying cry we need. That's the thing we need to get behind. Because even atheists didn't understand what that lawsuit was about. They saw it as petty. They saw it as dumb. And it's because they didn't even get past the actual details of it.
And so now that everyone is thoroughly angered and shaking and ready to break things, let's bring things back up a notch and let's talk about some victories. What do you got in there?
We don't win anything, so. Victories come constantly if you're looking.
And they're also complicated.
And they're all very complicated. And sometimes, even in the book, I have a victory that turns out to not be such a victory. But we have people every day, I don't want to say every day, all the time, giving secular invocations at their city council meetings. We have state senators like Juan Mendez giving secular invocations at state senate meetings because they fought for it. Every day they open those meetings with a prayer, and they rotate religions, and the non-religious are left out. And we put our foot down, and people walk in there and they read a wonderful humanist message, or they read something from Carl Sagan that talks about, just awe of the universe. They don't give these speeches and talk down about religion. They don't even mention religion. They mention humanism. They mention just the human beings, eye to eye, looking at each other. Juan Mendez asked people not to bow their head and close their eyes, but to look around and look at each other in the eyes. Those victories are bigger than we think, because that's government. Those are people that decide on laws that can change our lives. And the more we can show up, and the more we can humanize what's happening, and not make it some theistic, some weird expression of what God wants, and we say, look, we're here for each other. The reason these politicians go to work each day is to improve the lives of the people that they represent. And we have to remind them of that. So these are political and secular victories, or atheist victories in a sense, because they change minds. They change the way people think. I mean, when Juan Mendez gave his very first secular invocation, on the next day, the guy whose turn it was gave 2 prayers to make up for the one they missed. And
wow.
religious politicians demanded he apologize for insulting Juan Mendez like that, because they didn't think that they had missed the prayer the day before. They just got something different. When a Muslim shows up and gives a prayer, the next day the Christian doesn't do 2 to make up for the Muslim's prayer because it's to the wrong God. But when Juan Mendez just says, let's look each other in the eyes, remember why we're here, that needs to be made up for. That wasn't good enough. And the fact that religious politicians came to his defense moved us forward. The fact that the next day Juan Mendez went on his own website and changed his religious views from none to atheist
Dang.
sends a strong message. Those victories, like we talked about earlier, with snowballing, with ignoring in God we trust, these victories also snowball. They empower people. Justice Selection, Justin Scott, has been showing up countless times to political events and standing up and asking atheist voter questions. He wants to know, and he feels empowered to do so because we're making changes. So now he's forcing these politicians who at the time were running for president, John Kasich, Mike Huckabee, Ben Carson, he's forcing them to answer us. Would he ever vote for them? No, of course not. But they have to recognize that we exist because they do have, or did have, chances of winning at the time. Someone needs to hold their feet to the fire to say, if you are a president, if you're a senator, if you're a congressman, if you're anything, you represent us. And if we stay quiet, we are missed. And so by winning these victories, we are sending a powerful message that we are not to be messed with. And that we will stand up, we will be counted, and we will make you do so.
And speaking of complicated victories, I think we would probably be remiss if we didn't talk for a second about the Ark Encounter.
So when I wrote the book...
That may be the greatest reaction to a question I've ever gotten on the show.
When I first wrote this book, I started it a long time ago, of course. Books take a little while to write, even short ones. We had won. It was a victory of victories. I went to Apostacon in 2015, and I will toot my own horn and say I gave the best speech of my entire speaking career. I have never felt better walking off the stage. I have never gotten a better reaction from people when I talked about the victory of taking away tax dollars from Ken Ham's Ark Encounter. I literally walked off that stage, and David Fitzgerald, the author, everyone hopefully knows him.
Yeah, if you don't, you're missing out.
Please read his books. He's amazing. He's funny. He's smart. He's just an all-around great guy. Came up to me and said, make that a book. And I said, okay. You don't tell David Fitzgerald no.
Yes, sir, Mr. Fitzgerald.
And so I kind of toyed around with the idea a bit and kind of figured out, how could I write a book about this? And I don't want to write a book just about myself and how great I did, because it wasn't just me, number one. There was a lot of people involved in this victory. But also, that's a boring book. And so I decided, hey, I can wrap in some more people. I can, do some case studies, talk about this, talk about that, and pitched the book to my publisher, and they said yes. So I wrote it. It was pretty much done. It was being edited and worked on a little bit. And then a federal court said, nope, it's unconstitutional to block the Ark Encounter from getting this money. You have to approve their application.
Yeah, and just to give full context, what we're talking about here, obviously there was, we did the episode about the Ark Encounter, so hopefully folks are familiar enough with that. But initially, the state of Kentucky had decided to give them the tax money, and then it was taken away from them. That was the victory, and then an activist judge decided to give it back.
Correct. And to make matters just completely worse, the activist judge very conveniently waited until the Democratic governor lost the election, or the Democratic governor, Steve Beshear, his term was ending. And he had said he would not give them the money, and if the ruling came in favor of them, he would appeal immediately. But he wasn't, his time was running out. And you had two people running. You had Matt Bevin, the Republican Tea Partier, running against a Democrat whose name I don't remember because he lost, and that's what happens in this country. We forget. Both had come out with a clear message, and it wasn't really a campaign issue, but it was just something they were asked about. the Democrat said, no, I don't think they deserve the tax benefits, and I will appeal. Matt Bevin said, of course they deserve the tax benefits. I'm a Tea Partier, God damn it. I want to give all the money to all the churches. And that's not really what he said, but it's close enough. And Matt Bevin won. And it was actually a surprise. No one thought he would. People thought the Democrat would win. He was polling higher.
Which has been sort of a disaster for Kentucky. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I mean, we could go into a whole episode about his disastrous politics. But he won. They said, do you plan on appealing? He said, absolutely not. I'm happy with the ruling. The papers that needed to be approved went to the Tourism Tax Board. Not to be undone, Matt Bevin fired the entire Tourism Tax Board and hired all the people that he liked, who overwhelmingly, all but one, voted to approve the $18 million tax credit. End of story. No one can fight it now. At this level, we can fight it differently, and we can talk about that too. But we lost. He's now eligible for money. So instead of publishing a book that was factually wrong and made the victory sound great, and everyone would know it wasn't, I had to go back and work the book. But I thought it was important to kind of talk about that loss, and especially how it affected me, because we talked about this book and the build up and even awards I won for taking the money away. And then money goes back. And it sucked. I was bummed. The best way to put it, I was pretty sad for a while. But I didn't lose my drive to stay vocal about the park, to make sure that people that might want to visit the park out of curiosity know where their tax money that they spend there is going. We still have work to do. This puts us back in the hot seat. We now are responsible to helping Kentucky out, because they're getting a real short end of the stick here. The Williamstown economy is going to be tanked by the Ark Encounter, possibly for good. I mean, literally, it has the capability of just destroying that community, because they were promised so much in hotels, restaurants, Williamstown is going to become a hub. And just a month or two ago, the mayor said, this park has done nothing for us. They're seeing nothing from it. It's costing them close to $100 million in bonds that won't be paid back for many, many years, if ever, if the park survives. Or if it doesn't survive, they're on the hook for all of it. People aren't coming to Williamstown because Williamstown doesn't have a place for them to stay. They're going to Cincinnati for other things, driving to the park, visiting, and then driving back.
Yeah, Cincinnati.
Right. But why would a Chili's or a TGI Fridays or an Olive Garden or a mall or a Holiday Inn build in Williamstown when people aren't staying there? And they're not going for the Ark Encounter. The Ark Encounter is something in the area that people interested would go to. But it really has never, so far at least, shown that it's the kind of place that someone says, other than some weird fundamentalists who in pictures look like they're from 1940s Amish town, go. Who? I mean, really, what somewhat moderately Christian family said, I have a wonderful vacation idea this summer, kids. A week in Williamstown.
Yay!
Well, yeah, I mean, I may be, a little biased in the company that I keep, but I still have a lot of Christian friends, and they all think it's ridiculous too. I had the chance to hang out with some friends last night that I haven't seen in like a year, and we were just catching up on life, and I mentioned the protest that we did, and I said, I literally just said the words Ark Encounter, and I don't know if I've ever seen a pair of eyes roll harder in my entire life, and these are people who are sincerely devout Christians, and they think it's as ridiculous as I do.
Yeah, I have a lot of Christian friends, which it always seems to really surprise people when when, you're an atheist and how do you do that? It's not that hard. They all think it's hilarious. They think it's a massive joke. They're embarrassed by it. They think it actually makes their religion look bad.
Which it kind of does.
And it does. I agree. I think it does. I mean, to claim that story, number one, is real, but number two, that you need to build a big boat to prove it's real and then fail to do so miserably when you can barely fit the few animals they even represent in there.
But it's okay because they've got speakers playing the noises, so the other animals were there.
Yeah. Like, how badly do you need to prove something's real that you have to invent a fecal deposit system to just try to convince people that this could possibly be real? Like, when something is so outrageous that one of the questions is, what do you do with the poop? No one asks. I never saw the Titanic in my entire life. If someone told me that it wasn't real and we had to fight about it, poop wouldn't come up. Poop's not something that you worry about when something's being real or not, unless it's putting how many thousand animals on a giant boat with one window and a door that God sealed himself. And so you have people that consider themselves to be scientists, laughably, struggling over this and literally inventing a system that was never mentioned in the Bible about how a conveyor system would move poop around and dump it out of the boat into the water that they claim they can also drink.
You know where Saskatchewan is? Probably not. It's in Canada. If you do, you might know a city named Regina. In Regina, there's a studio. And in that studio, there are, at least once a month, a bunch of skeptical atheist geeks and goofballs who get together to do a podcast. We are the Brainstorm Crew, and we're trying to help spread a bit of reason and critical thinking while still having fun. Never taking things too seriously, but still not accepting everything we're told. We go through different topics, exploring them in depth and often disagreeing. We try to stick to provable facts, and we never trust a myth. That's why we say we're woo-free since 2013. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Spreaker under Brainstorm, or check out our website, brainstormblog.net. I can't promise you'll always agree with us, but I can promise you'll have fun listening to us.
Here's an excerpt from The God Virus by Darrell W. Ray.
Every day, religion affects us in ways we may not realize. It makes your Uncle Ned spend hours praying for you. It gives your Baptist neighbor a reason to reject her own child who married a Catholic. It teaches your Pentecostal sister to spank her children to keep them from going to hell. It requires a Catholic priest to deny his sex drive. It causes people to give enormous amounts of money to religious organizations and causes you to avoid talking to your cousin Jenny for fear she may try to convert you to Jehovah's Witnesses. Religion has both obvious and subtle influences on you and on society. This book explores the impact of religion on you and your world. It draws open the curtain of mystery and offers ways to understand and make informed decisions about religion. Have you ever wondered what makes religion so powerful? What makes people profess deep faith even as they act in ways that betray that faith? What makes people blind to the irrationalities of their own religion, yet see clearly the problems of other religions? How does it weave its way into our political system? If these and similar questions interest you, this book will help you understand its power in you, your family, and your culture.
The God Virus by Darrell W. Ray is available at atheistaudiobooks.com.
Well, the other thing that I think is important, and we probably don't need to go into full detail on this, because I would encourage everyone, if you missed it, if you didn't happen to hear the episode where I did my speech and interviewed folks at the Ark Encounter, you can go back and listen to our episode. It's called Weekend at Kenny's, which I thought was incredibly clever. But the Dogma Debate episode where David broadcasted basically the entire rally event afterwards, Jim Helton, the president of the Tri-State Freethinkers, they were the group that basically put most of the whole thing together. And he talked about, even though, the thing is there, they're getting the tax money, I don't even consider it an entire loss, because through the actions that Tri-State Freethinkers did, trying to sell the genocide and incest billboard and those kinds of things, he was talking to major news outlets. It wasn't just the local NBC affiliate. There were 10 different press organizations there. I talked to somebody from Vice News. There were huge news organizations talking about this, and Ken Ham wasn't the only person they were talking to. They were talking to us. So our voice got out there, and we were able to make our point because we decided to show up and say, hey, this is not okay. And they're going to do it anyways. We're still going to show up and protest. So I think that's an important thing to point out too, that even when we talk about this as a loss, I don't think it's an unqualified loss either.
You're right. And I even in the book, towards the end, I talk about the protest a little bit. It was one of the last pieces I was able to put in before it was, you can't make any more changes, was we forever changed the story of that park. That on opening day, this should have been Ken Ham's big moment. If you go back to the 50s when they opened Disneyland here in California, the headline papers were, Disneyland opens, Disneyland this, Disneyland that. They were the focus. Ark Encounter's headlines that day should have been, Ark Encounter opens, Ken Ham's dream comes true. All these different things.
Throngs of people.
Tens of people walked through a gate and saw this. But what was the headline every single time I turned on the news or picked up a newspaper, right, or clicked on a news site on the internet, was Ark Encounter opens under protest. Protesters at Ark Encounter opening. We were mentioned in every article and every headline, and we dominated. We just absolutely dominated. I was there from, I think, 8:30 in the morning, because I had arrived early while they were setting up, and I stayed with you right up to the end. We were they were packing up and leaving when we left. There were very few times that I didn't have someone with a pad of paper, a microphone, or a camera in my face, because everyone wanted to know what we had to say. People interviewed Ken Ham. People interviewed one or two people coming out, and they got quoted in the paper with us. But we had paragraphs. We had big photos. We dominated his opening day. And then to make it worse for him, we also paid attention to the number of cars driving in the parking lot. We went, I'll say we, in the sense that others went to the park and took pictures of an empty park.
Yeah, there are drone pictures of, there was a crew there that had drones with cameras, and they flew over the parking lot, and there were like a couple of hundred at the most, when they were expecting thousands.
Yep. I've done 2 blog posts about attendance since we've gone. And the first one, which was funny, because it was considered unfair by some, because the park opens at noon on Sundays. Which, church needs to come first. At 11:30, a drone flew over the parking lot. But the camera guy said between 11:30 and 12, so at some point in there. Flew a drone over the parking lot, and there are 12 cars in the parking lot. Now, I go to Disneyland almost once a month. I'm a member. My family's obsessed with it. We love it. You go a lot before it opens, because you want to get there early. You want to spend a good day there. If you show up an hour before Disneyland opens, you're in a line of cars. You're getting your spot. You're getting to the gate. There's people. Before this park opened, there was 12 cars in the parking lot. I'm going to imagine they're employees. You don't watch any cars in the video pulling in. You see a car sitting there. And some people came to me and said, that's unfair, because these are incredibly Christian people who are likely at church. They're going to go home, and then they're going to go visit the park. So flying over later will give you a better estimate of attendance. And I said, yes, you know what? Flying over different parts of the day will give you a better idea. But I said, Ken Ham sold this to Williamstown as Disneyland for Christians. And no one's going. And there should have been a line of cars waiting to get in. But I didn't know who the cameraman was. I had his handle on Reddit. And I said, get me different footage. And boy, did he come through. He went on a Saturday afternoon, hours after opening, on Labor Day weekend. Your long vacation weekend. This is when you go.
This is the big time.
This is the time.
Be packed here.
I counted, I think, if I'm not mistaken, about 400 cars in the parking lot. You know, I said 400 times, let's give four people per car. That should help with some plus or minus here. And then said, that's how many people are at your park. I was like, what, 1,200 or something like that. I can't do math. That's not sustainable. To sustain a park with his running size, with the amount that he's even promised that are going to walk through that gate, he needs 5,700 people per business day they are open. And they're only closed a couple of days throughout the year for Christmas, Thanksgiving, and a couple other holidays that they close for, unlike Disney that never closes. But there's no way they're going to sustain that. If on a Saturday at your busiest peak time, you're getting a few thousand into a park, you're never going to stay open. And that's not just us. That isn't just activism. I think there is a degree to us all being so vocal that people that may have just gone won't go because they don't want their money going back to it. I do believe that there's probably a decent amount of people that see a moral obligation to not go out of not supporting what's happening. Christians in the area think it's wrong that they're getting money for it. I mean, Baptist ministers signed on to a lawsuit to stop it. But the park's going to close. It's not sustainable. Williamstown's screwed. They're going to get really hit hard by this. But we, as a whole, like as going out, as being activists, have put this pressure and spotlight on. And without it, Ken Ham could open this park, run it for a while, close it silently. No one's the wiser. But if we keep pressure on this whole time, no one's going to be able to do this again.
Well, yeah, and I think that's...
Yeah, go ahead.
And I think that's really the point, because there was a lot of that same talk surrounding the Ark Encounter about how it's petty and, why. I mean, Eric Hovind had his guys there with signs like, why are you protesting a thing you don't believe in? Like, do you protest Star Trek? Would you protest Spider-Man? Which I thought was brilliant because he was acknowledging that his religion was equivalent to Star Trek and Spider-Man, which is fine. But I think that's a really good illustration of how there's value in just showing up to be the opposition, even if you don't end up winning. Losing doesn't mean you weren't effective, and it doesn't mean that you didn't do anything. Maybe you didn't get everything that you want, but it doesn't mean that you didn't accomplish anything. And I think that's kind of I think that's the real story about secular activism in light of the Ark Encounter, is that there was this grand victory. We didn't take the pressure off. Things didn't go the way we wanted. They got the money back. We turned the pressure up. The construction went forward. The opening went forward. We didn't stop. We kept going, and we got what we could out of it, and changing the conversation, putting the pressure on Ken Ham to explain these things. And and it's sad. I don't want to be the, haha, I told you so, Williamstown, your economy's screwed. Looks like you deserve it. Like, that's not what it's about. But I think it is important to point that out as an illustration of what can happen when these things go forward. And just imagine how much worse it would be if those things had gone on unopposed. So I think that's kind of the real story of the Ark Encounter. So Dan, we're over time here, and that's fine because I think this is all really, really important stuff, and I don't want to just impose some artificial deadline on time just because it's there. But in closing, can you sort of go over a couple of things from the back of the book? There's the activist toolkit, and I think there are plenty of things that are obvious if people want to get into activism. They can do blogging and YouTube channel, podcasts, that kind of stuff. But talk about some of the things that people might not necessarily think of as activism that people could do if they want to make a difference.
Join Twitter.
Oh,
I mentioned Twitter in there because
I love the part about Twitter in your book, and I'm actually going to start being more active on Twitter now because of it. So there's an impact that you had.
Yeah.
Can you convince me to get a Twitter? Let's see.
Yes, I can't wait for Twitter royalty checks to roll in. It takes a deal of learning here, and I've learned it through mistake, and I'll try to make it very concise. Go on and engage with people and walk away. Don't draw out fights with people and it gets so petty that you're name calling, because that's very easy to do on Twitter, especially with trolls. Make sure everything you do is public. So you're posting everything publicly, not just replying to a person privately. It's there for all to see. And if you don't know how to do that, just Google it real quick. It's very simple by using a period in front of the person's name, stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. Make your concise points. Question what they're telling you. So, evolution is a lie. Ask them how they know that. Let them answer these questions. Reply back very cordially, very matter of fact, and then walk away. Because Twitter is massive. There's millions of users on there. And they read what's happening. And things get shared and they move on. And the person that's engaging you is probably not going to change their mind. But just like in many forms of activism, many forms of debate, it's not about changing your opponent's mind. It's about the people that read it or hear it after. And Twitter just gives a really great space for doing that. And by limiting you to 140 characters, which is not many, it forces you to actually make a concise, real argument that you can't just fluff up with nonsense. You either have to give them 140 characters of total nonsense or 140 characters of total fact. And if you're fighting with a creationist, they're giving you 140 characters of nonsense. Don't reply with "you're dumb." Reply with why they're wrong. And then walk away from it. And they might try to keep engaging and keep poking you. Just let them go. Because people read it. People see that you came in, you said, we have this evidence, that evidence, that evidence. And then they saw this person freak out. And then you not freak out on them. You just won. Regardless of changing that person's mind. Because the person reading it that might be on the fence about what they believe is going to see a concise argument, fact-based, probably with links or, something. And then they're going to see the person whose back's against the wall lash out. Only those losing and don't have an argument to come back lash out. The same can happen. I've had arguments about Black Lives Matter. I've had arguments about same-sex marriage rights. I've had them all. And they're all so well crafted if Twitter is used correctly. And I even mentioned a few people on Twitter that people need to follow. Mr. Oz Atheist, Donovan Badrock from Australia, is a brilliant Twitter user. He engages wonderfully. He calls people out. He makes very matter-of-fact points. And then when they lose their cool, instead of technically just walking away, he usually tells them that they need a cup of tea and a nice lie down, and then he walks away.
That's fantastic. That's such an Australian thing to say, too.
But you also know it really, really angers that person because it's just okay, I see you're losing your mind. Why don't you just have a nice cup of hot tea and have a lie down? It sort of reminds me of, for better or worse, Peter Boghossian's, why don't you go have a seat over at the kids' table right now? It's a nicer way of saying that.
Right.
And then, I mentioned Godfrey World, who is a He keeps his real identity sort of a secret, but he's a biology professor, and he engages with creationists all day long. And he does so masterfully. He never lashes out. He never calls them names. He always keeps them on target and forces them to prove what they're saying. And then he offers back proof to what he's saying. So he doesn't say, prove it and walk away. He says, prove it. Oh, you can't? Well, here is what I said, and here's the proof behind it. And then walks away. And I've seen people say, wow, I never knew that.
That's
not
awesome.
the person he's debating. They usually call him a name and run away. But people see these things. So Twitter really does open that up. I love Facebook, but Facebook gives you that room for long-winded debate where people will just type an amazing amount of word salad that no one actually reads, and then your point is lost. And fights just become jumbled messes of, comments. If I see something has 153 comments on it, I walk away.
So the real question is are we going to create a Twitter account now?
Totes.
Nailed it.
You know how much I love getting in online fights. It's my favorite thing.
Right, yeah.
Well, I even talk, there's like movements.org I mentioned in the book. A great resource. You go on there, you log in, and there's people from all over the world saying, I need help. And you can find ways that you can help with it within your own abilities. So people like, look, I need to tell my story. I'm trying to escape from Syria. I'm stuck in Saudi Arabia, and I can't post about this. I need someone to help tell my story. They will tell you things, and you can write it for them.
Whoa.
And then you can post their story, and you can help get them out. You can help bring light to a situation that they can't bring light to. Like I said, like you mentioned, podcasts, YouTube, all these things, blogs, of course. But there's other ways to look, and I think using Twitter to people is just a wonderful way to connect. I've met thousands of atheists and activists on Twitter. I've made actual friends on Twitter that I've met in real life that I never would have known if I didn't get onto Twitter. Twitter gave me a sense of community before anything else did.
That's so awesome. Well, the book.
Can we title this episode "You Can Do It" with Dan Arel? I feel so inspired.
I'll take that under advisement. The book is The Secular Activist, a how-to manual for protecting the wall between church and state by Dan Arel. Dan, tell us where we can find it. Go ahead and plug all of the things that you want to plug.
Especially your Twitter.
You can find the book on October 1st, anywhere books are sold. It is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It has worldwide distribution, so if you walk into a bookstore and they don't have it, ask for it. They will be able to get it. I have a wonderful distributor with my publisher, so the book is never not available somewhere. It's available on audiobook, ebook, print. David Smalley reads the ebook, so you don't have to listen to my voice for 3.5 hours.
And his dulcet tones.
Yes.
I constantly joke that I went with David Smalley because I couldn't get Seth Andrews.
Oh, God. I want to make sure David knows that.
Please. It's been mentioned multiple times.
That's fantastic.
I keep pushing it. So please go out, find it. Soon I will probably have autographed copies available for sale on my website. If anyone wants one that has scribbles in it. Please go out, find it, read it. It's really short. I kept it short on purpose. I wanted people to read it and get to work. I don't want them to sit there and read a book for 2 months and then be too tired. I want people to read it in a couple of days and then say, I'm ready. I'm out there.
I finished it in a couple hours. And
readers, if you're reading it and you like it and you do something, let me know, because I would love to know what people are doing. Not to say that I don't want to know because I want to say, look what my book did. I want to know because I want to see more victories. I want to see more activists. I want to see more people in there, and I want to engage with them, and I want us to all work together.
Very cool. Well, Dan, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for the work that you do. This has been a great discussion. I hope people leave it feeling more inspired than they came in. I know I certainly do. So thanks for coming on the show again.
Thank you for having me. I'm always happy to come on.
And that, my friends, is going to do it for this episode of the Gaytheist Manifesto on Secular Media Network. Definitely, again, want to thank Dan for his time and for his activism. You can find the show on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto. You can email us at thegaytheistmanifesto@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at Gaytheist Callie. You can find the show on Twitter at The Gaytheists. And...
well, we talked a bit about how, there's lots of great things that can come out of activism, but sometimes it can be a negative thing and it can really stress you out. So I think that we should end the episode with a guided meditation.
Oh my God.
Find a comfortable place to lay or sit and close your eyes. Let's begin with some relaxing breathing. You're going to breathe in slowly, feeling your lungs expand to just below their full capacity, filling your chest. Then hold for 3 seconds. Then exhale slowly, imagining the negative feelings as a colored mist that exits your body as you breathe out. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, then exhale slowly. Continue this process, imagining more and more of the negative mist leaving your body, and feel your muscles start to untighten and relax as you do so. As you continue to breathe, imagine now that you are seated at a desk with a computer. The desk can be any desk that makes you feel at home and at peace. Maybe it's a circular marble desk with a regal chair that looks like it belongs in a French palace, or maybe it's a simple mahogany with a comfy office chair. Imagine yourself logging onto Facebook, typing Ari Stillman into the search box, and sending a friend request to the person with the short hair and the glasses who's flipping off the camera in the profile picture. Now see yourself navigating to your email and composing a message addressed to aristillman4@gmail.com. The subject line reads, "You are wrong about everything." See yourself in your mind's eye composing the message assertively but calmly, and then clicking send. Now imagine in your mind's eye logging onto iTunes or Spreaker and subscribing to the SJW Circle Jerk. Oh, sorry, I was reading the wrong part. That line was actually supposed to be in the meditation that I wrote to help you inflict suffering on yourself to atone for all your sins in your past lives. Not this one for relieving negativity. Okay, sorry, here we go. Continue your breathing until you feel your muscles totally relax. The mist has been expelled and your mind and body are now free of the negativity. When you are ready, slowly open your eyes. You are now ready to enjoy your new inner peace for the rest of the day.
Wow, I'm almost too relaxed to finish the outro, Ari. Thank you. That was good. If you want to support the show and the activism we do, you can head to patreon.com/thegaytheist manifesto and make a per episode donation as little as $1 per episode. You can also head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star review. That is equally helpful. Before we go, I want you to know that if you're lost, you're hurting, you're scared, if you feel like no one cares and no one understands, you need to know there's a community out here that loves you, cares for you, knows that you're capable of amazing things and that you are worthy of love. If you're struggling, please don't be afraid to reach out. Until next time, friends, this is the Gaytheist Manifesto.